This is Sentinels Shawdow by Theodore K. Alexander. I trudged back to the small cubicle I shared with Ashley, my mind heavy with the weight of Magnus's expectations and Butcher's thinly veiled skepticism. The Sentinel headquarters hummed with the usual magical bureaucracy, junior agents levitating files between departments, arcane monitors tracking supernatural activity throughout the city, and the constant low-grade buzz of protective wards maintaining security. A pair of memory specialists hurried past, their silver robes marking them as the people you called when a mundane saw something they shouldn't. Never a good sign this early in the day. As I rounded the corner, I spotted Ashley balanced precariously on the back legs of her chair, feet propped on our shared desk, absent-mindedly manipulating tiny, glowing illusions between her fingers. She'd created what looked like miniature constellations, stars forming and reforming into different patterns as she twirled her fingers. The casual display of magical control was impressive, even if her posture screamed, "I'm bored out of my mind." "Productive afternoon?" I asked, leaning against the cubicle entrance. She startled, the illusions dissipating like smoke as her chair crashed forward.
"Ethan, finally!"
She jumped to her feet, hazel eyes bright with anticipation.
"Well, what did Magnus want? Please tell me it wasn't just another lecture about my training progress reports."
I moved to my desk, fighting back a smile at her unbridled enthusiasm. "Hang on. Weren't you supposed to be practicing those defensive shields until I got back?" Ashley rolled her eyes with the particular dramatic flair only 19-year-olds have truly mastered.
"Done 45 minutes ago, level 3 attacks, please."
She waved her hand dismissively, her pixie cut bouncing with the gesture.
"I got them holding against level 5s before I got bored."
"Level 5s, I repeated, not bothering to hide my skepticism. Level 5 magical attacks were the kind that could punch through concrete. Show me. With an exaggerated sigh that somehow conveyed both inconvenience and eagerness to show off, Ashley stepped into the small, clear area of our cubicle. She closed her eyes, centered her breathing, and made a circular motion with both hands.
"Aegis Arcanum,"
she murmured, and the air around her shimmered with a translucent dome of protective energy. "Impetus Maxima," I countered, sending a controlled force blast at her shield. Not a full level 5, because I wasn't completely irresponsible, but strong enough to test her claim. The energy splashed against her shield like water on glass, dissipating harmlessly. Ashley didn't even flinch. She raised a single eyebrow in that "told you so" expression she'd perfected within her first week as my apprentice. "Huh," I admitted, genuinely impressed. "Not bad, Ash."
"Not bad?"
She dropped the shield with a flick of her wrist.
That was textbook perfect. Better than textbook. I improvised a resonance dampener into the matrix so it wouldn't just deflect the energy, but actually absorb and neutralize it.
She grinned.
"I figured it out while you were in your meeting. Turns out if you invert the third runic sequence in Harrington's shield formula..."
Okay, I raised my hands in surrender. I'm impressed, truly, though maybe next time practice the advanced magical theory in the training room instead of our very breakable, very paper-filled office space.
"Where's the fun in that?"
she asked, hopping back onto her chair.
"So, the meeting? Did Magnus finally realize my vast, untapped potential? Am I being promoted to full Sentinel? Ooh, or is this about that haunted subway car case because I have theories?"
I shook my head, equal parts exasperated and amused. "Not exactly. We've got a case."
"A real case?"
Ashley's voice rose an octave, earning us several glances from nearby cubicles.
"Not just shadowing or observing or filing or any of the other 100 non-magical tasks you've had me doing."
"A real case," I confirmed, lowering my voice. "But it's complicated and sensitive." Ashley pumped her fist in the air, barely containing herself.
"Yes! Finally! When do we start? What are we dealing with? Dark magic, dimensional rifts, rogue elementals?
Whoa, settle down there, Winters, I said, gesturing for her to lower her voice. This isn't a carnival ride. People are getting sick, both magical and mundane residents in the waterfront district. Cognitive issues, emotional disturbances, some cases progressing to near catatonia. Her excitement didn't dim, but it took on a more focused quality.
Magical illness affecting non-magical people? That's unusual.
Exactly why we need to handle this carefully, I said, impressed by how quickly she'd zeroed in on the key issue. We're dealing with a mixed community. Magnus wants us maintaining cover as public health researchers. I pulled out the fake IDs and showed her hers. Dr. Ashley Wilson, research assistant. She took the ID, examining it with a mixture of amusement and disappointment.
Public health? Seriously? I was hoping for something with a little more pizzazz, like undercover demon hunters or maybe magical private investigators.
This isn't about pizzazz, I said, my tone sharpening enough to make her look up. It's about helping these people without exposing the magical world. One wrong move, one spell cast where a mundane can see it, and we're looking at a containment nightmare.
So what you're saying is?
She replied, tapping the ID against her palm.
No turning parking meters into flamingos this time.
I stared at her. Did you actually?
Joke. That was a joke.
She grinned.
Mostly.
This is exactly why Butcher thinks I'm insane for bringing you along, I muttered, rubbing my temples where a headache was beginning to form. Ashley's expression sobered.
I understand. Low profile, no obvious magic.
She tucked the ID into her pocket.
What's our approach?
I leaned back in my chair, mentally cataloging our options. We had 3 days. 3 days before Magnus would call in the heavy-handed containment team. Standard procedure would be to start with medical records, interview affected families, set up detection spells, all of which would take precious time we didn't have. We head to the waterfront tomorrow morning, start interviewing affected families, set up some discreet detection spells around the perimeter. I paused, considering our next step. I knew what we needed to do, even if the thought made my stomach knot. But tonight I think we should make a visit to Cinder Alley. Her eyebrows shot up.
The solitaire district? I thought Sentinels weren't exactly welcome there.
We're not, I admitted, my reluctance evident in my voice. Last time I went there on official business, I nearly lost an arm to a particularly creative hex. The kind that turns your flesh into living glass. I flexed my fingers unconsciously at the memory.
Then why risk it?
Because we don't have time for the usual channels, I explained. 3 days, that's all Magnus gave us before he brings in the memory specialists and reality adjusters. And with 23 victims already, I shook my head. We need information fast. Cinder Alley runs on information. It's their primary currency. If something weird is happening in Toronto, someone there will have heard whispers about it. I drummed my fingers on the desk, trying to appear more confident about this plan than I felt. Reaching automatically for my jacket on the back of my chair, I paused as my fingers brushed the partially restored, still singed leather. Ashley's earlier magical mishap had left it with a missing sleeve and enough burn holes to make it look like I'd wandered through a dragon's den. Right, I muttered, pulling open my bottom desk drawer instead. I kept emergency supplies there, energy bars, spare wand components, and thankfully a well-worn gray hooded sweater that had seen me through more than a few all-nighters. Some sentinel I am, can't even remember my own jacket as toast. Ashley had the good grace to look slightly embarrassed as I pulled out the sweater.
I really am sorry about that. I could try the restoration spell again.
Let's not tempt fate, I said quickly, pulling the sweater over my head. Besides, I know someone who might be willing to help us with the case if she's feeling generous. Ashley was already gathering her things, practically vibrating with excitement.
Who's that?
Elara Thorne, talented diviner, unofficial information broker, and definitely not a fan of Sentinels. I grimaced, my discomfort obvious. I have avoided calling in this particular favor for years, but I gestured vaguely toward the file Magnus had given me, with its photos of the victims, including children. Some things are more important than personal comfort.
Why would she help us if she hates Sentinels?
Ashley asked, adjusting the strap of her messenger bag, her curious nature impossible to contain. I hesitated, uncomfortable with the whole topic. It's complicated. Let's just say she and my father had history.
Oh, come on.
Ashley protested, her vibrant personality on full display.
You can't just drop a mysterious hint about your legendary Sentinel father and then clam up. That's narrative malpractice.
I couldn't help but smile at her phrasing, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. Fine. Abbreviated version. Cinder Alley was established about 70 years ago when the Arcane Council decided that all magic users needed to be registered, tracked, and regulated.
The Great Registration.
Ashley nodded. She might skip ahead in practical lessons, but her magical history was solid.
When they created the Sentinel Division?
Right. Not everyone was thrilled about having their magical activities monitored by the government. Some went underground, others fought back. But a group of about 200 practitioners decided to create their own community, a place where magic could be practiced freely without oversight.
The Solitaires.
Ashley said. Exactly. They chose an abandoned industrial district on the east side of Toronto and warded it so heavily that it basically became a separate pocket of reality within the city. The council wasn't happy, but they didn't have the resources or political will to force them out, especially after the Solitaires made it clear they'd fight to the last person.
So they reached a compromise?
Ashley asked as we walked toward the exit. An uneasy truce, I corrected. Sentinels don't enter Cinder Alley without invitation, and Solitaires don't practice destructive magic outside their territory. It's worked, more or less, for decades, though there have been incidents.
And Elara Thorne?
I sighed, checking my watch. Enough time to grab a quick bite before we head to Cinder Alley. We'd need to move quickly if we wanted to catch Elara before her evening commitments. The thought of seeing her again made my shoulder blades itch, but with Magnus's deadline hanging over us, I didn't see another option. Charlie worked with her back in the day, I explained, lowering my voice as we passed the main security desk. Before she went solitaire, she was one of the best diviners the council had, could track magical signatures that most practitioners couldn't even detect, but she had philosophical differences with arcane leadership.
What kind of philosophical differences?
The kind that end with half the council chambers on fire and security wards that took 3 months to repair, I replied dryly. Charlie never gave me the full story, but he maintained contact with her even after she left. Said sometimes you need allies on both sides of the fence. We stepped outside into the fading afternoon light. The Sentinel headquarters, disguised as a nondescript government building to mundane eyes, shimmered slightly as we crossed the boundary of its protective enchantments.
And your father? How does he fit in?
Ashley asked, her curiosity clearly unsatisfied. I unlocked my car, buying me a moment to decide how much to share. The truth was, I'd avoided Elara Thorne for years, not just because going to Cinder Alley made my Sentinel bosses nervous, but because every time I saw her, I saw the shadows of secrets about my father she wasn't sharing. After Charlie introduced them, my dad started using Elara as an unofficial informant in some of his cases. Against regulations, of course. According to Charlie, she helped him solve the Riverside hauntings case of 91, though you won't find her name in any official reports. What I didn't say was that my last visit to Elara 2 years ago had ended with her cryptic warning. You're asking the wrong questions about your father's death, Ethan. When you're ready for the right ones, come back. I'd walked out, telling myself I didn't need her riddles or her help. But those 23 victims didn't have the luxury of my pride or my personal issues with the past.
So she might help us because of that connection?
Ashley asked, breaking into my thoughts. Maybe. Or she might slam the door in our faces. I checked my watch again. It's about an hour until sundown. Cinder Alley really comes alive after dark, and I mean that literally in some cases. We should head over soon if we want to catch Elara before her regular clients start showing up.
This is so cool.
Ashley said, her excitement bubbling back to the surface.
My first real field mission, a mysterious illness, and now we're going to a magical underground community to meet a rebel diviner with connections to your father's secret past.
It's not a field trip to Disney World, Ash, I warned, though I couldn't help but be a little infected by her enthusiasm despite my reservations. Cinder Alley operates by different rules. Some of the magic practiced there. It's not what you've been taught. Stay close to me, don't wander off, and for the love of everything magical, don't try to correct anyone's spellcasting technique.
That was one time.
She protested.
And Professor Harrington said he appreciated my insights on transmutation theory.
Harrington is an 80-year-old academic who hasn't left his tower in a decade. Solitaires are practical magic users who don't appreciate know-it-all apprentices questioning their methods. I gave her a pointed look. Just observe and learn, okay? Think of it as a different magical tradition, not a wrong one.
Fine,
She agreed, though the gleam in her eye wasn't entirely reassuring.
respectful silence it is. I'll be so quiet, you'll think I've been hexed with a silence charm.
I'd settle for regular indoor voice levels, I muttered, starting the car. And be ready for a frosty reception. Last time I showed up at Elara's door, she threatened to turn me into a decorative fountain ornament.
What did you do?
Asked about my father, I said, more tersely than I'd intended. It's a touchy subject. I pulled into traffic, mentally preparing myself for the uncomfortable conversation ahead. 3 days, 23 victims. Sometimes you had to swallow your pride and face the past, especially when lives were on the line. Good work on those shields, by the way, I added, changing the subject. Really? Her smile then, proud but also genuinely touched by the simple praise, reminded me why I'd taken her on as an apprentice in the first place. Behind all the quips and showing off was a young mage with incredible potential who just needed someone to believe in her. Much like Charlie had done for me. Now I just had to keep her from getting us both killed, cursed, or exiled on her first real case. And somehow convince a woman who had every reason to hate Sentinels to help us, all while the clock was ticking down on Magnus's deadline, no pressure at all. As we drove away from the Sentinel headquarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that this case was going to change everything, for both of us. I just hoped we'd be ready for whatever came next.
Hey, Ethan?
Ashley's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. Yeah?
Thanks for trusting me with this.
I glanced over at her, this brilliant, reckless apprentice who reminded me so much of myself at her age. Don't make me regret it, Ash. She grinned.
Where would be the fun in that?
And despite everything, the deadline, the danger, the looming conversation with Elara, I found myself grinning back. Cinder Alley transformed after sunset. During the day, it looked like any other aging neighborhood in Toronto, a bit run down maybe, with odd-colored paints and eccentric garden decorations. But at night, it revealed its true nature. As we crossed the threshold where mundane Toronto ended and Cinder Alley began, the air itself changed quality, becoming thicker, humming with magical potential that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The boundary wasn't marked by anything as obvious as a wall or gate, just a subtle shimmer in the air that most people would mistake for heat rising from the pavement. But to anyone with magical sensitivity, it felt like walking through an electrical field.
Holy crap.
Ashley whispered beside me, her hazel eyes wide with wonder. I knew exactly what she meant. The transformation was breathtaking. The narrow cobblestone streets pulsed with soft, multicolored light emanating from runes carved into the stones themselves. Ancient protection sigils glowed on doorways, some in steady golden light, others flickering like flame, each one unique to the practitioner who'd created it. Curious lights hovered in windows, some forming complex mathematical patterns that shifted and reconfigured themselves continuously. Plants that definitely weren't in any mundane botanist's catalog shimmered and swayed in front gardens, despite the complete absence of wind. A vine with luminescent blue flowers climbed up one building, its blooms opening and closing in perfect unison like they were breathing. Nearby, what appeared to be a miniature cherry tree sprouted fruit that changed color every few seconds, cycling through the entire spectrum. Above us, the sky was different too, deeper, more star-filled than it had any right to be in the middle of light-polluted Toronto. Some of those stars moved in deliberate patterns, forming momentary constellations before dissolving and reforming.
This is amazing.
Ashley murmured as we walked the narrow streets. Her eyes darted everywhere, drinking in the sights.
I've never seen so many different magical styles in one place.
That's the appeal of Cinder Alley, I explained, keeping my voice low as we passed a group of solitaires who gave us openly suspicious looks. No regulations on magical practice, no arcane council oversight, freedom to experiment. We stepped out onto what passed for Cinder Alley's main thoroughfare, and the magical intensity ratcheted up even further. Wooden stalls and colorful tents lined both sides of the street, creating an open-air market that buzzed with activity. Merchants called out their wares in multiple languages, some I recognized, others that definitely weren't human in origin.
And that's bad?
Ashley asked, clearly struggling to see the downside as she slowed to examine a booth where a woman with 6 fingers on each hand was selling crystallized emotion, literal tears of joy and vials of liquid laughter that shimmered with golden light. Next to it, a man with skin that seemed to shift like smoke was demonstrating tiny homunculi made from clay and blood, each one performing acrobatic tricks on the counter of his booth. Further down, a hunched figure in a hooded cloak sold bottles of swirling, luminescent liquid, labeled in a script that changed every time you blinked. Freedom's great until someone accidentally opens a portal to a hunger dimension or curses their neighbor's cat to speak in prophecies that actually come true. I steered her around a suspicious-looking puddle that seemed to be moving against gravity. The arcane code exists for a reason. As if to illustrate my point, a group of children darted past us, giggling as they chased a ball of pure magical energy that bounced erratically down the street. One girl, no more than 7, held out her hand and caused the ball to multiply into 3 identical copies with a casual gesture that would have earned her a week of detention at the Arcane Academy. The children's laughter echoed with an otherworldly resonance as they vanished down an alley, the magic trailing sparks behind them.
Did you see that?
Ashley whispered, impressed.
That kid just performed a 3rd-level multiplication charm without even using an incantation. I couldn't do that until last year.
Solitaire children grow up surrounded by magic, I explained, navigating us through the crowd. No restrictions, no pacing curriculum. They learn fast, but
what?
But without proper foundations, they hit limits later that are hard to overcome. And accidents happen. I nodded toward a building with a curious warping effect around its windows, as if the reality there hadn't quite healed properly. That's where a teenager tried to enchant his entire apartment to exist in 2 places simultaneously about 5 years ago. Tore a hole in the fabric of space-time. 3 people got partially phased into another dimension before they managed to stabilize it. Ashley didn't look convinced.
It seems peaceful enough here.
That's because we're on the main street. The deeper alleys have different rules. I nodded toward a shop ahead with a sign depicting a crescent moon partially eclipsing a sun. That's our destination, Elara's place. Let me do the talking. As we approached the shop, I could feel the subtle tingle of detection wards washing over us. Magical identification. They'd know we were Sentinels before we even knocked. The door opened before we reached it, but it wasn't Elara who greeted us. A tall man with intricate tattoos crawling up his neck blocked the entrance, arms folded across his chest. The tattoos weren't merely decorative. I recognized them as living ward marks, magical protections inscribed directly into the skin that could be activated with a thought. Dangerous and illegal in council territory.
Sentinels aren't welcome here,
He stated flatly. His gaze fixed on me, recognition dawning.
especially not John Cooper's boy.
Ashley glanced at me, surprised by the reference to my father, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm here to see Elara, I said calmly. Tell her Ethan Cooper needs her expertise on a health matter, affecting both sides of the veil. The man's eyes narrowed, but he disappeared back into the shop without another word. Ashley leaned closer to me.
What's with the attitude?
She whispered,
And why'd he mention your father?
My dad had a complicated relationship with Cinder Alley, I replied softly. He believed in the law, but he also understood the value of alternative perspectives. Made him some friends here, and plenty of enemies. Before Ashley could ask more questions, the man returned.
She'll see you. 5 minutes.
He stepped aside reluctantly. The interior of Elara's shop was a sensory overload. Herbs and dried magical ingredients hung from the ceiling in neat bundles. Glass cases displayed crystals, bones, and artifacts I couldn't identify. The air smelled of sandalwood, sage, and something else. Something older and earthier that tickled at the edge of my magical awareness. Elara stood behind a counter, arranging something on a velvet cloth. She was in her 50s, with silver streaking her dark hair and eyes that seemed to shift color in the shop's dim lighting. Those eyes fixed on me with laser intensity as we entered.
Ethan Cooper?
She said, her voice neither friendly nor hostile.
You look more like him every year.
I inclined my head slightly. Elara, thanks for seeing us.
Us?
Her gaze shifted to Ashley, studying her with the penetrating focus of a diviner.
Ah, the apprentice. Interesting aura you have, girl. Strong in veils and illusions, but unfocused. Like looking at sunlight through rippling water.
Ashley blinked, clearly unsure whether to take it as a compliment.
Thank you, I think.
Elara's lips twitched in almost amusement before she returned her attention to me.
5 minutes, Cooper. Make them count.
Something's affecting residents in the waterfront district, I said, getting straight to the point. Both magical and mundane. Mental deterioration, emotional instability, progressing to near catatonia in some cases. No obvious physical cause. Elara's expression sharpened with interest.
Mixed population effects? That's uncommon.
She moved from behind the counter, the beads and charms woven into her clothing making soft musical sounds as she approached.
How long?
First cases appeared about 3 weeks ago. 23 victims confirmed so far.
Pattern of spread?
Geographical clustering, but no person-to-person transmission that we can detect. Age and magical ability don't seem to matter. Elara circled us slowly, her eyes unfocused in that way diviners get when they're seeing more than just the physical.
You're sure it's magical in origin?
Faint traces, nothing distinct enough to identify. She stopped directly in front of me, studying my face with unsettling intensity.
Why come to me, Sentinel? Your kind has laboratories, experts, resources I can only dream of.
I met her gaze steadily. Because you see things others miss. Because you have connections throughout the magical community that don't talk to Sentinels. And because cases like this have a way of being complicated.
Complicated.
She repeated with a humorless smile.
A diplomatic word for politically inconvenient.
She turned away, moving to a shelf lined with ancient-looking books.
I don't owe the Sentinels anything. Quite the opposite.
I'm not asking for the Sentinels, I said quietly. I'm asking for the people getting sick, magical and mundane alike. Elara's fingers paused on the spine of a book. For a long moment, she stood perfectly still, her back to us. When she finally turned, her expression had shifted into something I couldn't quite read.
You have his eyes.
She said softly.
Not just the color. The way you look at people. Like you're actually seeing them, not just what they can do for you.
She approached me again, this time with purpose.
Your father saved my life once, did you know that?
I shook my head. He didn't talk much about his work, not with me. Elara moved to a small cabinet and retrieved a wooden box inlaid with silver.
30 years ago, when the council was purging anyone they deemed unregistered practitioners, John Cooper found me before the eradication squad did.
She opened the box and removed what looked like a badge, but unlike any Sentinel badge I'd ever seen. This one was older, with different insignia.
He gave me this.
She continued.
A Sentinel identifier that would register as active in the tracking systems. Could have turned me in. Should have, according to your precious arcane code.
Her voice held old bitterness, but also something else. Respect, maybe.
Instead, he helped me escape the sweep.
I struggled to find words. That's against at least 6 sections of the arcane code.
Your father understood something many Sentinels don't.
Elara said, returning the badge to its box.
That sometimes justice and law aren't the same thing.
She glanced at Ashley, who was listening with rapt attention.
For 3 years, John Cooper fed me information about council plans, helped me warn other practitioners who were on the eradication lists.
Ashley shifted beside me, clearly surprised by this revelation about my father. I was too, though I tried not to show it. John Cooper, the great Sentinel, systematically undermining council orders.
When the Riverside hauntings happened in '91, it wasn't my divination skills John needed.
Elara continued, moving back behind her counter.
It was access to places the Sentinels couldn't go. We tracked that entity through parts of Toronto the council doesn't even know exist.
Her eyes held mine.
Your father wasn't just a good Sentinel, Ethan. He was a good man. Knew when to follow the rules and when to break them.
She pulled out a different box and extracted what looked like a pendant. A clear crystal suspended on a leather cord.
I owed him a debt.
She continued.
Never got to repay it before he was killed.
Her eyes locked with mine.
Perhaps I can pay it to his son instead. 3 similar cases came through Cinder Alley last week.
She said, all business now.
Different symptoms on the surface. One with uncontrollable weeping, one with memory gaps, one with violent outbursts. But the magical signature was the same on all of them.
What was it? I asked, stepping closer.
Energy drainage.
Elara replied, handing me the pendant.
Not the usual kind, not like a standard feeding hex or vitality theft. This was selective. It was feeding specifically on emotional and mental energy, leaving the physical mostly intact.
Ashley frowned.
Like a psychic vampire?
Elara gave her an appraising look.
Clever girl. Similar principle, but more refined, more targeted.
She nodded at the pendant in my hand.
That's attuned to detect the residual signature. It will grow warm in the presence of the same magic that affected my clients.
I examined the crystal, noting the faint runes etched into its surface. Did your clients recover?
Partially. I was able to cleanse the worst of the effects, but they're still diminished. Like something essential was taken that can't be fully restored.
Her expression grew grave.
Whatever's doing this isn't just feeding, Koopa. It's harvesting.
A chill ran down my spine. Harvesting for what?
That
Elara said grimly.
is what you need to find out.
She looked between Ashley and me.
23 victims already. That's a significant amount of psychic energy. Someone's building towards something big.
Ashley leaned forward, fascination overriding her caution.
Could it be a ritual, something that requires mental energy as a component?
Possibly.
Elara acknowledged.
Or a creature that feeds specifically on consciousness. There are entities in the deeper realms that consider human awareness a delicacy.
I slipped the pendant over my head, tucking it beneath my shirt. Thank you, Elara. This helps more than you know. She made a dismissive gesture.
Consider the debt paid. But Koopa,
Her expression turned deadly serious.
if this is what I suspect, you're dealing with something ancient. Something that knows exactly what it's doing. Don't underestimate it.
I nodded, understanding the warning. Any other advice?
Trust no one,
She said bluntly.
even those closest to you.
Her gaze flickered briefly to Ashley, then back to me.
Consciousness-affecting magic is insidious. You won't know you're compromised until it's too late.
As we turned to leave, Elara called after me.
Ethan, one more thing.
I paused at the doorway.
Your father never told you why he helped me, did he?
I shook my head.
Ask Charlie sometime.
She said, a sad smile touching her lips.
Ask him about the summer of '89 and what John Cooper learned about the Council's secrets.
With that cryptic statement, she turned away, clearly dismissing us. Outside the shop, Ashley was practically bursting with questions.
What was that about? Your father saved her? And what secrets was she talking about? And did you know there were entities that feed on consciousness? This is incredible.
I held up a hand to stem the flood of inquiries. One thing at a time, Ash. First, let's get back to headquarters and process what we've learned. We moved back through the magical marketplace, more subdued now, both of us processing what Elara had shared. The night had deepened, and the magical energy of Cinder Alley had intensified with it. Spectral lights danced between buildings, carrying messages between practitioners. A wisp of greenish fog with too many eyes floated past us, leaving a scent like electricity and seawater in its wake. We were about halfway back to the border when a shout from behind made us turn.
Hey, Sentinels!
4 figures blocked our path, 3 men and a woman, all wearing the distinctive metal armbands that marked them as militant solitaires, the faction most openly hostile to the Arcane Council. The leader, a muscular man with a shaved head and glowing blue sigils tattooed across his scalp, stepped forward.
What's your business in Cinder Alley?
He demanded.
Coming to spy on us for your council masters?
I kept my voice calm and even. We were just leaving. We had legitimate business with Elara Thorne. The woman, tall, with dark hair pulled into tight braids, spat on the ground.
Elara's going soft if she's entertaining Sentinels now.
We don't want trouble, I said, subtly shifting my stance to a more defensive position. I felt Ashley do the same beside me, her breathing controlled and even. Good girl, her training was kicking in,
Too bad.
the leader said, raising his hands. The blue sigils on his head began to glow brighter.
Because trouble found you. You Sentinels think you can just walk into our territory, throwing your weight around?
We haven't thrown any weight, I pointed out reasonably. We came, we spoke with Elara, now we're leaving. No laws broken, no trouble caused.
Your existence is trouble.
The third man growled, a wispy tendril of darkness already curling around his fingers.
I lost my brother to your precious containment teams last year.
I recognized the magic gathering in their hands. Raw emotional energy, unrefined and dangerous. Not deadly, but definitely painful if it connected. This was about to get ugly. Ashley, I murmured from the corner of my mouth, remember the synchronized shield drill?
On your mark.
She confirmed quietly, her fingers making subtle preparatory movements at her side. The leader evidently didn't like us whispering to each other. With a sharp gesture, he sent a bolt of crackling blue energy straight at my chest. Now, I shouted, and Ashley and I moved in perfect coordination. Aegis duplicatum, we called in unison, our hands making mirrored gestures. Twin half-shields manifested, mine a deep crimson, hers a shimmering gold, and merged seamlessly in front of us, forming a complete barrier that caught the energy bolt and absorbed it. The solitaires looked momentarily surprised by our coordinated defense. I used that split second of hesitation to counter. Repulso, I called, channeling energy through my right hand while maintaining my half of the shield with my left. A wave of force rolled outward, not strong enough to injure, but enough to push our attackers back several feet. The woman recovered first, launching a series of quick-fire energy darts around the sides of our shield. Ashley reacted without needing instruction, extending our shields sideways to catch them while simultaneously crafting an illusion of a second Ashley appearing to flank them.
Two can play at misdirection,
She muttered, her concentration intense as she maintained both the shield extension and the convincing illusion. The solitaires split their attention, two of them turning to deal with the illusory Ashley. Exactly what we needed. Caligo momentous, I whispered, crafting a localized fog spell. Instantly, thick gray mist billowed around our attackers, obscuring their vision.
Vertoider,
Ashley added, and I recognized the tricky spatial distortion charm that made people turn around without realizing it, a specialty of illusionists. I dropped our shield and grabbed the real Ashley's arm. Time to go. We sprinted down the street while behind us, the solitaires shouted in confusion, firing blasts of magic at shadows and each other as Ashley's illusion and my fog worked together to disorient them completely. By the time they sorted themselves out, we'd rounded two corners and were approaching the boundary of Cinder Alley.
that
Ashley said between heavy breaths as we ran.
was awesome.
That, I countered, checking over my shoulder to make sure we weren't being followed, was exactly what I was hoping to avoid. We slowed as we approached the boundary, the magic-heavy atmosphere of Cinder Alley gradually thinning as we neared mundane Toronto. Just before we crossed the threshold, I heard slow, deliberate applause. A figure leaned against a wall nearby, the tattooed doorman from Elara's shop.
Nicely handled.
He said, his tone suggesting genuine appreciation.
Elara said to tell you, the waterfront victims. Check the back of their necks. There'll be a mark.
Without waiting for a response, he turned and vanished back into the shadows of Cinder Alley. We crossed back into mundane Toronto, the magical energy dissipating around us like stepping from a hot sauna into cool air. The ordinary street lamps seemed dimmer somehow, the everyday world less vibrant after the magical intensity of Cinder Alley. That shield combo was perfect, I told Ashley, once we were safely back in my car. Where did you learn to extend it laterally like that? She gave me a satisfied grin.
Improvised it. The shield harmonics were similar enough to the resonance dampener I was playing with earlier, so I just adapted.
I shook my head, impressed despite myself. Remind me to thank your illusion professor. That fake Ashley was convincing enough to fool me for a second.
Who says that was the illusion?
She quipped, then laughed at my expression.
Joke! That was definitely me sitting next to you the whole time.
As we drove away from Cinder Alley, the pendant Elara had given me grew subtly warmer against my chest. Whatever was draining minds in the waterfront was active, even now. And somehow, I had a feeling we were already running out of time.
So?
Ashley said after a few minutes of silence.
Your dad was secretly helping solitaires escape council persecution?
I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel, memories and questions swirling. Apparently.
And you had no idea?
No, I admitted, none. She considered this.
What are you going to ask Charlie about? The summer of '89, wasn't it?
I don't know if I am, I said honestly. The case had to come first. People were sick, maybe dying. My family history would have to wait. But as we drove back toward headquarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that the two might be connected in ways I couldn't yet see. My father, the council, secrets buried for decades, and now something ancient feeding on minds in the waterfront.
Ethan?
Ashley's voice pulled me back to the present.
We're going to help those people, right? The ones who are sick?
I glanced at her, this brilliant, reckless apprentice who reminded me so much of myself at her age, and maybe in ways I was just beginning to understand, like my father too. Yeah, I said with more confidence than I felt. We are, starting tomorrow at the waterfront.
And the council's secrets?
She pressed. One impossible problem at a time, Winters, I replied. One impossible problem at a time. And that wraps up another episode of Sentinels Shawdow by Theodore K. Alexander. If you're enjoying Ethan and Ashley's adventures through Toronto's magical underworld, the next episode drops soon, so make sure you've hit that subscribe button and turned on notifications so you don't miss it. Your likes and comments really help this series reach more urban fantasy fans, so take a second to drop your thoughts below.